Special debate. Election news from where you live.
Apparently they were into the dance.
We good? All right, sorry. We're back from that break, and I'm giving this question to Bob Goldsmith. Currently, school resource officers are not assigned to each TSC school. Should there be, and if you support, how could you make that happen?
Well, Dr. Hamback and I have talked about this quite a bit. We both support an officer in every school. Is that reality? Probably not. But we want to make that happen. We want to grow that program. Our school resource officers, in my opinion, are the best in the state, if not the country. They are doing an outstanding job of building positive relationships with our youth. And to be honest with you, I think the calls at the schools have gone down significantly. There's certain types of calls where they like to share photos. Those have gone down quite a bit, and I think it's because of the work our school resource officers do. But I would absolutely love to have an officer in every school. But reality is that's going to have to be something we grow.
Jason, how would you answer that?
Yeah, I don't think there's any doubt that school safety is the top of any law enforcement leaders, right on the top of their list. We have to continue to work with the school corporation. I, too, have had conversations with Dr. Hamback about how it is that we can responsibly grow that program. It obviously takes lots of resources, both personnel as well as financial obligations and commitments from the school, the sheriff's office, the county, any number of ways. I would like to see us explore as many grant opportunities as we absolutely can. The federal government just passed legislation in June that increases the amount of school safety grants that are out there, and we should do absolutely everything we can to explore those grant opportunities so we can increase those number of school resource officers within our system.
I have an addition to that. With adding more to the smaller school, middle and elementary, would you be okay with adding it to the high schools, like two for high schools?
Yeah, or do you want...
Bob, I'd like you to go.
Absolutely.
Sorry.
More in the high schools. We could do more programming with them. We require them to teach some programs to them. We require them to do the explorers and the sheriff camp, and there's a lot of stuff they're required to do. A lot of people think it's an easy job. It's not. I think it's a great job, but yeah, 2, 3, 4 more in the high schools I think would be great.
Okay. Jason?
Yeah, absolutely. Again, school safety is at the top of everybody's list. We have to be able to not only staff them, but then properly equip and train them for any number of reasons. That being school safety, how to talk with apps, how to interact cordially with your students. But more importantly, how is it that we are going to respond on that unfortunate day when a threat or violence comes to our doors? That's where we need to put our resources to ensure that if and when that day comes, that we're prepared.
Would you like to give a rebuttal to Jason's statement, Bob?
No, I think we're both on the exact same page when it comes to schools and our children.
Do you agree with that, Jason?
I agree.
Okay. On to the next question. Indiana relaxed its concealed carry laws last year. Did you support this change? Why or why not? And this question is going to Jason.
I don't support that. I'm 100% a Second Amendment advocate, and I think that we should never take that right for granted. However, what they did is very much handicap the efforts that law enforcement has on the street to be able to determine somebody quickly who has the right to carry a gun and who doesn't. That investigative tool, taking that away, creates a lot of danger not only to the officers but also to our community. I think it's one thing that we all agree on, that if we can safeguard who has access to weapons and who shouldn't, that's something that our due diligence should be done with.
Bob, how do you respond to that?
I supported it. It's your Second Amendment right, and I think right now the criminals are carrying the guns anyway, and those that are following the law, they now have the opportunity to carry them. There's people, I was sitting in meetings with legislators when we were talking about this. The one thing I don't like is there isn't something in place for an officer to run a person and know whether they can carry a gun or not. But in law enforcement, you treat everybody as if they have a gun. You don't treat them any differently, but your eyes and ears, everything, your senses are up. But I think there needs to be a database in place, and that's what concerned me. But I did support this. I wasn't out at front and everything about that. But, one thing that they're talking about now is going door to door and checking on your guns. I don't support that. As long as I'm in office, the sheriff, we're not sending deputies to your house to check your guns. Not going to happen under me.
Okay. Do you have a rebuttal to that, Jason?
Again, I'm 100% supportive of the Second Amendment. The investigative portion that officers, the challenges that they face will be something new that we'll have to work through, but inevitably will cost somebody a life and an officer's life. And that's the reality of that, not having that investigative tool. That's why I did not support that.
Bob, do you have a rebuttal to that?
No, that's where I stand.
Okay. On to question 7. Are there measures you could take as sheriff to decrease gun violence in the county, such as homicides or suicides? That's for Bob. I'm sorry about that.
I know you're going to IU. No. No, I think the measures we can take is training our officers and how to write a report. Not change the wording to fit your narrative here, but literally writing a good report and locking these people up, and then the prosecutors and judges work, and we keep them behind bars. When you lock them up for a gun charge and 20 minutes later they're out before the deputy or police officer even has a report done, that's ridiculous. So I think that's ways we could take to decrease gun violence. But then going back, this may sound a little Mayberry to you, but literally we have to have a relationship with the citizens that we serve. I can't tell you the number of Facebook, Messenger, Instagram, texts I get from people giving me tips, if you will, and they want to remain anonymous. That's the way people communicate now, and we have to accept that. And if you're open and you're answering your phone and you're answering your emails, you're going to learn about these things and who's doing the things they're not supposed to. Gun violence is one of those, and I think as long as we keep an open dialogue with our citizens, we can help drive that down. Now look, we see every day in the news and those things. We've had 9 shooting incidents in the county since I've been in office, and several of those have been suicides. There's a lot more that have been going on in the city. What we need to do, like he had said earlier, and I totally support it, is get with the city police departments. We've had our detectives reach out to them and say, hey, we will absolutely help you any way we can. Here's the resources we can give you. We have to work together. It takes every department, and that starts at the top. All the chiefs get along. We all text, talk on the phone, go to lunch, eat dinner. We all talk to each other, and that's why this community is so great.
Jason, how would you respond to that?
I have a 3-pronged approach to address this issue. One, it starts with an agency response, it's a collective law enforcement response, and it's a community response. And I'll start with our agency response. I mentioned it earlier, standing up a special operations unit that will consist of a violent crimes rapid response unit is the first step. Being proactive and not reactive to what's going on in our community. Having a group of deputies that go out in the event of an incident to quickly address that issue. Aggressively serving warrants on violent felons. Getting people off the street that don't need to be on the street. Collectively, we need to come together with a task force. You'll hear that over and over, task force. Collaboration is how we solve problems. Collaboration within law enforcement, within those agencies. Bringing together our top law enforcement officials to collectively deal with this problem. And then lastly, our community. We can't do this alone. We can't solve this problem alone. We have to build those relationships and build that trust. We have to make it understand that violence is not the issue. That starts at our schools. That starts at home. That starts with you in those conversations that you have with your children. That starts with us in the conversations that we have with individuals on the street. It starts with that female that's being battered by their husband and doesn't see a way out, and providing an opportunity for her to see hope. That's where it starts. So collectively, as an agency, as a law enforcement community, and then all of us sitting in this room and at home.
Do you have a rebuttal to that, Bob?
Yeah, I agree with what he's saying, but the thing that the citizens don't realize a lot of times are the duties of the sheriff's office and the transports. We've done 800 EDOs this year, where that's 2 to 3, 4 hours out of an officer's day taking somebody to a hospital. We typically have 2 people off. That leaves us with 7. If somebody calls off sick, you're down to 6. If you're doing a transport, you're down to 5. We have people sitting at the hospitals all the time. We're doing juvenile transports at 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. So I agree with what he's saying. It comes down to the manpower. And I know some will say, stop. And he said, stop. So we're stopping.
Okay. This next question is for Jason. Law enforcement is being asked to do more when it comes to dealing with people with drug abuse, addiction, and a whole spectrum of mental health problems. How should the Sheriff's Department train for this, and is it fair to ask the department to do this kind of work?
Well, whether it's fair or not isn't the question, because we have to.
Yes.
For 6 years, this has been what I have dedicated myself and our agency to tackling. I presented at local, state, and national and international conferences about the work that we're doing at community corrections and dealing with those with substance use and mental health issues. Bringing resources to those incarcerated, bringing resources to our staff to be able to address these issues head on, to be proactive in how we address these issues, not reactive. You'll hear that over and over again. Being proactive, not reactive to what we do. We can't wait 3 years to start a program. We have to do that day one. Day one, we hit the ground running, making sure that our staff is best trained, that we have the resources in our jail to be able to address these issues, that we have a reentry program so when an individual is looking to exit those doors, that there's a plan in place for that person to leave. You're 5 to 10 times more likely to die of an overdose once you leave our jail. 5 to 10 times more likely to die. That's somebody's son, that's somebody's daughter, that's somebody's husband, that's somebody's wife. We have to do everything we can to address that. We have to have that person have the resources available to them when they leave. It's not enabling. It's understanding and having compassion for those that are in a system.
How do you respond to that question, Bob?
Yeah, like I said before, we've increased our training. A lot of that is mental health related. They do CIT training. But when they get in, most of the time, when we deal with these folks on the street and they end up in our building, what are we doing? Well, like I said, we had 24 hours of mental health services for the inmates when I came in. Now we have over 80. We're going to have a social services person at the beginning of the year that'll help respond to these calls with the deputies and take those things over and get those people to the community partners and the resources they need. We're not going to arrest our way out of this problem, but a lot of times they're committing crimes that put themselves in here. So we have medication-assisted treatment. We have programs that I helped create, the Q360 program, where they recognize their triggers. They recognize things they shouldn't be doing and the people they're running with and how to interview for jobs and read a lease and go get home. They do all of that. I do the job interviews with them. It's programming. But at some point, it's not our responsibility anymore. And I hate to say that, but when they leave the door, it's difficult for us because we have all these other responsibilities. So what we've done with our medical provider is help guide those people to the resources in the community that will help them. That's what we can do. And that's what we have to continue to do. But at some point, we have to go back to answering calls, doing the EDOs, taking people to court, those things. That's what we have to do. That's our responsibility.
In addition to that question, how do you get the drugs away from children within the increase of fentanyl? Or, for Jason. Yeah, sorry.
I'm sorry, can you one more time?
Yeah, I can repeat that. Additionally to that, how do you get drug access away from children with that increase of candy-like fentanyl, or candy-looking fentanyl?
Sure. Education, communication are the top ways that we can do that, right? Educating our youth as to the dangers of this. Having an open line of communication that they can come talk to a school resource officer, that they feel comfortable talking to a school counselor, that they feel comfortable talking to an officer that they meet on the street. To that point, I'll stand up a youth advisory safety council that will allow those lines of communication to flow much more freely, to give us an opportunity to have those conversations productively. That's Sorry.
Bob?
I need to go over there.
Okay.
You owe me time. No, I'm kidding. No, building on what he's saying, because again, we're both been in law enforcement for a while. We're going to say a lot of the same things, but building on what he's saying, we also have to educate the adults. And part of the problem, I'm not a doctor, it's what they're being prescribed. I know myself, I was prescribed some stuff that's bad for you, you can get hooked on. I just took the pain. I didn't take the pills. But it's educating our kids, talking to the parents, putting those drugs up. Unfortunately, some bad things are going to happen. But as long as we have the open lines of communication, like you said, hopefully we can minimize those situations.
Okay. Okay. This question is for Bob. How would you value diversity, promote equality, and facilitate inclusion among your staff and community? This is question 9.
How will I value? I think it's extremely important. That's why we have the first person of color and the first female person on our merit board, and we're reaching out to local leaders to draw people to our department to make it more diverse. I mean, we understand that. We accept it. We don't condone hate in our facility. We're extremely thorough on our background checks to make sure we don't have anybody that's running with those groups. But it is absolutely important to have everything you said in your department because it is part of your community.
Jason?
Again, I touched on it earlier. We all agree that we want to have a diverse workforce and be reflective of the community in which we serve. In order to do that, we have to have those conversations with our minority community. We have to do everything we can to engage them to be a part of the law enforcement profession. There's no more noble profession than that of law enforcement. No more noble profession. You have the ability to touch lives. You have the ability to change directions of lives. And in order to do that, we have to make sure that there's an opportunity for that, for our minority community to feel a part of that, to not feel trapped because of stereotypes or because of stigma that goes associated with being part of them and not being part of us. That's bringing people together. That's standing arm in arm and not toe to toe. That's collectively solving a problem. It's a tall task. Don't get me wrong, it's a tall task, but one that we've got to be able to sit down at a table with and start to have those conversations.
Bob, do you rebuttal to that at all?
No, I agree with him, and we have been having those conversations and going to lunch with people in Battleground and having those conversations in downtown Lafayette because I recognize it's a problem. I need the community's help to get through this problem and the staff. And I think everybody at the department, the office is on board.
Jason? No?
I agree.
Okay. Jeff is going to give us our closing statement.
All right, thank you. We've got, actually, for timing purposes, the candidates don't know about this yet. You know about it now. We're going to be taking another quick break. We'll come back from that with some questions that have actually come in during the debate.
Oh, interesting.
Thank you.